When you got older, did you find that a lot of the things your parents told you growing up weren't actually all that true? I mean, you're just a kid, so you look up to your parents. They're your first and, at least then, only frame of reference for the world. So you treat the things they say like you can just take them to the bank. But then once you grow up, you realize that a lot of it doesn't really line up with the real world. I know that happened to me. I would hang on my father's every word and would take whatever he said as just straight wisdom, right up until the point where reality backhanded me down to earth. My father wasn't the mythic being I saw him as. He was just telling me what he thought. His opinions on how the world worked were just that, his fallible opinions. But the things that my father did, that was where the wisdom lived. It was his actions, not his words, that taught me valuable lessons about life. That is the subject of today's video, the wisdom of fathers. Now, my father was a schemer of the highest order. I remember one day he came home from work and told us that we were going to open up a sandwich shop. He'd been in Philly on business and found some hole-in-the-wall spot and had a sandwich that just blew his mind. And we were going to replicate that out in the suburbs and become filthy rich. I think I was like 8 or 9 at the time, and when he said that, I immediately started planning for it like it was reality. Like we were going to open this shop, one day it would be mine, and that was going to be my life. My father had ideas like this all the time. None of them ever panned out or even got off the ground, but it was still an important life lesson for me. See, a few years back, I was studying English literature and I had this crazy idea to make a comic book. It would be this wild story about a World War I soldier and a woman in a war-torn city who plays the cello while the world crumbles around her. I would incorporate ancient philosophy and write it using archaic writing styles so it would sound like some epic written hundreds of years ago. Well, eventually, despite never having produced a comic book before, I made that happen. Now I make comic books, how I want, about what I want, the way I want. And no matter what comes of it, I owe all of that to my father's refusal to stop dreaming. To never stop pursuing what you want from life, no matter how ridiculous it may seem. I learned that life stops the moment you consciously decide to stop pursuing your dreams, and I got that from the actions of my father. I wanted to tell this story because it was one of the most profound moments from my childhood. I'm 10 years old, and my brother had just started getting into music with me tagging along as little brothers do. We didn't own any albums yet. All we had was a cassette deck, and my brother and I would record the songs that we liked off the radio onto a blank tape. So one day, we're just waiting for my father to come home from work. We'd heard this hot new song on the radio and recorded it, and we were excited to play it for him. My dad was going to hear the song, it would absolutely blow his mind, and he would immediately fall to his knees, having had his very reality and consciousness shatter into fractured euphoria from hearing it. My dad walks in the door and we bum rush him like the little shits that we were. Come here, we say as we drag him into our bedroom. You gotta hear this. Then, with bated breath, my brother pressed play. Jump, jump, the Mac Dad'll make you jump, jump, the Daddy Mac will make you jump, jump, crisscross will make you jump, jump. The song ended. Wasn't that great, Dad? Can we go buy the album? He just stood there, motionless, silent, stoic. Finally, after what felt like several lifetimes, my dad thought carefully about his words and he said, "You do realize that a year from now, you'll have forgotten all about this, right? You won't like that song anymore." "You don't know that, Dad. This is our music," we said defiantly. "Okay," he said, and he got back into his car, drove us to the music store, and paid $8 for the hot debut album from Criss Cross. And in a year's time, just like he'd said, we'd forgotten all about it. Now, maybe that story doesn't sound all that remarkable, but you have to think about it from my old man's perspective. This is a man with impeccable taste in music. Stuff that never goes out of style. The Temptations, Aretha Franklin, Gladys Knight, Steely Dan, Pink Floyd, the Dire Straits, Elton John, and the Reverend Al Green. He stood there while his two idiot sons jumped around the room like buffoons to crisscross, yelling, "Jump! Jump!" He watched and he listened, and it sounded like utter nonsense to him, but he immediately recognized something very profound. He knew that what he was hearing wasn't meant for him. It belonged to the next generation, and even though he had every right to say, "That's stupid," or "Hell no, I'm not spending money on that," he just accepted it for what it was, and even paid for it, knowing full well this was a lesson that we had to learn for ourselves. It was something that stayed with me because, for whatever reason, as I got older, I saw many people from my generation fail to do this. In my early 20s, I saw people my age suddenly turning into bitter geriatrics the moment a teenage fad came along that wasn't made for them. It's continually amazed me how few people are able to accept the evolutionary nature of culture, how they embrace it when it's designed specifically for them, only to bitterly decry it when it no longer does. I'm only 40 now, and the youth culture of today is virtually lost on me. I find myself looking at the trends, the music, the movies, and have no idea why it appeals to anyone. But that's the point. It isn't any better or worse than what I had when I was a kid. It just doesn't speak to me because it's not supposed to. That part of my life is over, and no amount of anger or bitterness will ever bring it back, because that is the nature of things. And because I was prepared for that by the wisdom of my father's actions, I am honestly a better and more content person for it. So, thank you, Dad.